Hey everybody, welcome back to Pink K-Pop Academy. My name is Orna and today I have 5 tips for you for neurodivergent dancers. I myself have both ADHD and autism, and some of those neurodivergent traits actually proved really useful when it came to learning dance, especially as a beginner. So I would love to share these tips with you. You don't actually have to be neurodivergent for these tips to work for you. You can be neurotypical or you can have traits of neurodivergency. It's just that these things will make more immediate sense to somebody who's neurodivergent, but the tips themselves are still solid regardless, okay? So hopefully everybody can get something from this. So the 5 things that we're going to be going over are pattern and sequence recognition, rule following, sensory sensitivities, daydreaming and escapism, and special interests. So let's start with the first one, which is pattern and sequence recognition. My brain loves patterns and sequences, and I'm sure some of you guys have the same type of brain as I do. Like everything I do, my brain will find the pattern in it. Everything, whether it's work or like video games or like reading a book, everything I do, my brain will find the sequence or it will find the pattern in what I'm doing. And this actually became crazy useful in dance because I think it was in my second month of dancing that my brain started to recognize, hey, do you know, some of these shapes are the same as the shapes we did last month. And actually some of them are showing up in exactly the same way. And some of them are even showing up like next to the same other shapes that we did last time. My brain was immediately recognizing the similarities and the patterns that commonly show up in K-pop dance. And when I tell you guys that this skyrocketed my learning, like, oh my goodness, like it changed everything. It made it so much faster. So how do we use this? How do we use this pattern brain, right? So to use the pattern brain, we got to go back to our basic steps, because like we didn't start in kindergarten with geometry, right? No, we started with learning triangle, square, and circle. So that's where we're going to start with dance too. So dance is choreography broken down into moves, which can be broken down into shapes. So if we start with our shapes, there are 3 main types of shape in K-pop dance. There are diagonal lines, there are what I call C shapes, and then there are 90-degree angles, okay? Almost everything you learn will be one of those 3 categories. And once you have learned the basics that belong in those 3 categories, your brain will immediately start to recognize it in other dances, in other moves, in other things, okay? Because all dance, I won't say all, we'll say 99.999% of K-pop moves will be made up of those shapes in some sequence or pattern, okay? So once you have learned those shapes, your brain will immediately start to pick them out and recognize them. And it's just gonna make it so much faster because you're not starting from scratch. Every time you learn something new, your brain already knows what it is. Your brain already knows that the basics are there. And once you allow your brain to have the knowledge even that this dance that I'm about to learn is going to be made up of stuff I've done before, just let it do its thing. Let the pattern recognition kick in. And like suddenly you'll find yourself, like I would find myself in class and we'd learn a move and I would already know what move was going to be next because there was only one logical way for the pattern to continue. So while everyone around me was still like hanging on the teacher's every word, trying to work out what the next move was going to be, I was already half doing it. So when the teacher explained it, my brain just went, yep, got it. So use that pattern recognition talent that your brain already has. All you got to do is feed it the shapes. If you practice your basics and your brain knows what the shapes are, then it's going to be able to pick them out, no problem, and start using them in a sequenced way, in a logical way that will just speed up everything. Another thing about thinking about dance in terms of like patterns and shapes is that it takes the mystery out of it. So you know, if you have learned those 3 types of shapes to the best of your ability and you are working really hard at being the best you possibly can at those shapes, all of the rest of your dancing is going to be really good because that's all it is. At the end of the day, yes, there's artistic expression and all that, of course, but I'm talking about beginner to intermediate level, where as long as you are doing those shapes to the best of your ability, you are dancing correctly because it's logical. It really is body geometry when it comes to your basics, you know? There's only so many ways a diagonal line will look good. You know, if it's at the wrong angle, it's at the wrong angle. And you can tell that by looking in a mirror. You can practice your diagonal lines and see, oh, hey, look, this looks pretty. This does not look quite so pretty. So you know, if you've practiced your diagonal line, it's going to look good. You know, if you've practiced your C shapes, they're going to look good. And it takes out that fear, because if you know that your shapes are good, nobody can look at you and say, no, they're weird, they're awkward, there's something wrong with how they dance, because there can't be. Because if your basics are solid, your dancing is solid. And that was something that I loved about practicing my basics, because I knew that if my basics were good, nobody could judge me. And as somebody who was really, really scared of being like embarrassing myself in class and like people laughing at me for not being a good dancer, the fact that I knew that if my shapes were good, that my dancing would just automatically be good, the relief. I used to work really, really hard at my shapes so that when I got to class, I knew that I was going to be the cleanest, the sharpest, and have the prettiest shapes in the room. And I did, because I focused on the basics and I focused on practicing my sequences and patterns. And guys, it paid off. So that is pattern and sequencing. Let's take a look at number 2. Okay, so the second tip is rule following or direction following. So again, if you have a brain like mine and you tend to follow rules and directions quite literally, then you maybe have had this like experience in school where the teacher says, okay guys, you're going to answer question A, question B, then question D, and come back to question C. And like a lot of the other people around you will kind of go, that's stupid, I'm just going to go A, B, C, D, right? But you don't do that. It doesn't matter, even if the entire rest of the room is like succumbs to peer pressure and they all go A, B, C, and D. You're like, no, but the teacher said A, B, D, C. So that's how I'm going to do it, right? So I'm talking about stuff like that. How this worked for me as a dance student, it worked in 2 ways. One of them was, again, like the previous tip where it takes the mystery out of it. If the teacher says left foot, left foot, and you need to be leaning in a particular way, well then as long as I move my left foot, my right foot, and my left foot, and I lean in that particular way, then I know the move I'm doing is correct. It's not magic. It's not something I have to work it out. The teacher has told me how to do it, and therefore if I do it how he explained it, it will be correct. And that's what I did. So when I would go home after class and practice, I would practice it exactly as he did it and exactly as he explained it. And very often, the rest of the class did not. The rest of the class would, you could see their brains working as they were in class, trying to work out what the moves were. Instead of just looking at him and following what he was saying and following what he was doing, they were always trying to do it for themselves. And even if they followed his directions on week 1, by the time they had had a week to practice and come back, they would have completely reinvented how to do the dance moves themselves, instead of what I did, which was I would go home and practice and I would think in my head, how did he do it and how did he explain it? Every single move I would practice exactly the way that he had taught it. And then when I got to class, very often, technically wise, I would look the best in the room because I had done it exactly as he had said. And I didn't have any fear of being wrong because I knew that I had practiced it exactly as he told us. Now, from time to time, because he is a human, he would have explained something, not incorrectly, but not as well as he could have. And then the following week, when he had taught it a couple more times to a couple of different classes, he would have changed it. And then when he got back to us to teach us the next part, he'd look back and go, why are you doing the move like that? And I would be like, because that's how you taught it, sir. But I'm going to say 99% of the time, because he was a very talented teacher, that did not happen. How I learned it, how I practiced it was exactly how it was meant to be done. And very often what happened was, as other people hadn't practiced it exactly in the way that he had told them, their moves would start to get smaller and kind of some messy lines would start to creep in, and they wouldn't be as put together. It was like every week they were kind of that starting from scratch idea. Even though we'd done it the previous week, they would be kind of trying to learn it again as we were going through it. And at the end of the month, I remember this, it was my 4th month, because there was a couple of moves that honestly, they were pretty silly as moves. And you really, really had to like just go for the move. And the teacher said, go for it. He told us how to do it and how to do it really big. So I did it as he taught it. And over the month, every time we did that section of dance, everybody else's moves would get smaller and smaller and smaller because they were nervous and they felt kind of embarrassed because it was silly. And it was honestly really hard for my little rule follower at that point to keep going, because I was like, God, but everybody else is doing it differently. So who do I follow now? But the teacher, he kept the moves big himself. So I was like, okay, look, he's a teacher, just keep following him. And at the end of the month, we would take videos at the end of every month in groups to just like to review our own, how we were getting on, our progress. And I remember watching back the video from that month and thinking, I'm really glad that I followed everything as he said it, because I can see that I am the only one doing it correctly. I am the only one for whom the shapes actually make sense when I look at them all together. And because everybody else let that like embarrassment get to them, their moves were no longer as powerful or as strong. Whereas I looked really, really, really good, especially considering I only had 4 months of training at that point. So yeah, guys, follow the rule follower. Like, if that's something that you've got, lean into it. And like, I am also a human, but in my videos, I have done my best to explain everything in a way that if you follow how I teach, you can trust your rule follower, because they are going to be correct. The moves are going to be correct, okay? I've done my best to structure all my videos, all my basics, all my tutorials, everything in a way, because I know people have those rule followers like I do. And I want your rule follower to feel like safe in the knowledge that if they follow the directions, they will get the desired outcome. So that's on rule following. So our third tip today is sensory sensations. So if, like me, you have some sensory issues, we can actually use those for dancing. So there's a couple of different, like there's many, many, many different types of sensory issues. So what I'm talking about with these ones are sensory sensations within the body. Okay, so for example, if I put my arm up like this, immediately I can feel strain and discomfort in my arm. For other people, they might have to wait a little while until the muscles are starting to get stressed, but for me, I can feel the discomfort like immediately. And I use that as a dancer because I know exactly what type of discomfort means my arm is in the correct position. So when I was training my basics and especially my shapes, what I would do was get into the ideal version of the shape, or sometimes the teacher would come around and correct our shapes so that I knew I was in the right place because he had put me in it. And then I would hone in on the muscles, on the body parts that were uncomfortable. And I would try and take almost like a body memory of what it felt like. Because then I could use that pain and discomfort as a marker for the next time I want to make the shape and I want to make it look really good. This is what it needs to feel like. And initially, yes, that's uncomfortable and even painful. But once your body learns what the different markers mean and how to use them, which just happens with practice, it becomes less uncomfortable, or it becomes uncomfortable in a different way. In the same way that like the first couple of times you go to the gym and your muscles are screaming at you and you're like, oh my God, this is torture. But then after a while, like you start to kind of like the feeling of the muscles burning. You kind of get used to it and even start to like it in a way. And it's the same idea. Once you start using the pain and discomfort as cues for your dancing to help yourself improve, because you're using it kind of in a positive way, it stops being so uncomfortable and it stops being overwhelming as well. Now, we are sensory beings and we can get overwhelmed. So, be careful of your limits as well. Don't do too much. But we can, something that is so often it can be quite a debilitating experience in many cases. Like we can use that as like a dancer's superpower, because we have this like automatic connection with our body's sensations that other people just don't have until it's like at extremes, but we have it right away. And we can make use of that to fast track our dancing, to fast track our muscle memory and our abilities. because all we got to do is find the position we need to be in, tell the body, okay, you feel this pain? This is good pain. This is where we're meant to be. And then the body can recreate that pain at the right times in the right ways when it needs to. And then it stops being painful and it just starts becoming sensations of movement. And if you really, really give into it, you can find this incredible like flow and connection within your body when you dance, and it becomes really, really cool. But yeah, we gotta get through the uncomfortable stage first. But also, if you're somebody that your sensory things are more to do with, for example, like clothes on your body rather than feeling like the muscles themselves, put on something that you don't like wearing, okay? And use that to practice. Put that arm up. If you're wearing like a scratchy t-shirt, okay, well, when you put your arm up in the right way, the t-shirt is going to touch the body in a specific way. And use that as your marker instead. Wear clothes that give you a sensory experience to act as markers. All we're trying to do is give the body markers the whole time so that it knows when it's in the correct position to help it speed up its muscle memory development. So there you go. That's how we can use our sensory difficulties as a superpower. All right, so number 4 is daydreaming and escapism. I am a huge daydreamer. I spend way too much time every day just daydreaming. And the term I've seen used a lot is maladaptive daydreaming. I don't agree that it's maladaptive. I think that there's a very adaptive reason for why neurodivergent people daydream if you're a daydreamer. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that in that way. But so I just call it daydreaming. I don't like to say that it's maladaptive. It's just daydreaming. But daydreaming or escapism is actually something that really, really helped me improve my danceability, because for me, music is a great way to daydream and to escape. And like I mentioned in the previous thing about how you can develop that flow of like going into your body with the movements, when you combine the escape of music with the escape of being in your body in movement, wow, that's a magical place, you know? And like there would be times when I would just dance for hours and hours and hours. I would just put music in and I would just move. And the music would create like these scenarios around me, these places, these people, these stories. And as the dancer, I would be like the main character and I would be acting out what this character was doing, but by dancing, you know? And what became really useful was that if I had to perform, for example, I would pick I'd pick the song that I had to perform to, and I would check out the lyrics and I would listen to the song, and I would try and get a feeling for what the main character in that song is feeling, what's their story, what's going on. And then I would just put on the song and I would daydream to that song through that character and dancing the dance and trying to see how the character comes through in the dance and how I can tell the story through the dance. And just allowing myself to completely escape into that daydream as that character. Firstly, it was really good fun and gave me a form of escapism. But secondly, it meant that when I got up to perform, I didn't have to think about performing because I had daydreamed so much that character itself was almost muscle memory. So then once the song came on, I didn't have to think like, oh, I'm going to be performing and is it going to look okay or is it going to be embarrassing? None of that mattered because my body had daydreamed it so much that the character would just come out and I would just go for it. And it made the whole thing much, much more fun. But so like being able to use my daydreams not just as a way to kind of keep myself motivated for practice, because, you know, if practice is a kind of escapism, then it's not work. It's not like, oh, I have to go home and practice for 2 hours now. It was like, I can't wait to go home and practice because it was my escape. But it was also a way for me to build characters and build performance. And yeah, it's still something that I do even to this day. Some nights I will just stick on my earphones and play some random music and just jump around my room like a lunatic and just see where the daydreams take me. So that is how daydreaming and escapism actually really helped me as a dancer. And number 5, our last tip for today is special interest. Now, this isn't so much a tip that I can give you because, you know, something either is your special interest or it isn't, you know. But once dance became something I was passionate about and it became my special interest, that has probably helped me more than anything else. Because like the escapism I mentioned previously, like it just became something that I always wanted to do. It became a place I always wanted to go. And not just dance itself, but like, for example, my dance school was also part of my special interest. I was obsessed with the school itself, and I knew who all the teachers were, and I knew, like, I used to know some of the teachers' like timetables, even though it wasn't classes that I had, because I was just so interested in this school, in their philosophy, in the teachers, in the styles, in the way that they taught things. Like, the school itself was my special interest, and I was fiercely loyal to this school for many years as a dance student. And that special interest motivated me to be the best, because I wanted to not just be a good dancer, I wanted to be recognized within that school as one of the best dancers. And then, so that always drove me forward. And even when it moved away from the school and it was just about dance itself, I've never been able to get away from it. You know, there have been times when I've gotten very anxious and very kind of stressed about dance, and I've kind of said, look, maybe I need to stop this now, and I've stepped away from it. And then, you know what, like, I'll take a break for a month or maybe 2 months, and then I'll see a dance somewhere. I'll see a K-pop stage, or I'll see something that reminds me of dance, and I'll immediately go, nope, I gotta do this. I cannot stay away from this. It is just something that I have been so interested in for such a long time now, almost 10 years now, and it's something I'll always come back to. You know, I always want to know more, I always want to look into it more, I always want to learn more. You know, it really is, it's not just a passion, you know, it is a special interest. It is something that I'm always focused on and looking into and developing. And I think how my special interest has developed is it's gone from that special interest in the school to special interest in dance, and now it's a special interest kind of focused on dance teaching and how I can be the best teacher that I can for you guys. And today my special interest has led me to making this video about how being a neurodivergent has been helpful for me. All right guys, so that was my 5 tips for neurodivergent dancers and neurotypical dancers and everybody in between dancers. You are all wonderful and amazing. I have really enjoyed making this video. I would love to hear what you guys think in the comments, if you guys share any of these traits, or if you found that any of these things have already been helpful in your dance lives, like by yourselves. Yeah, if you would like more neurodivergent friendly dance content, do give us a like and a subscribe, because there will definitely be more stuff coming soon. And yeah, I will see you all again in the next video. Bye.